The forgotten blade on planet Virex ***. The desert winds howled across the dead surface of planet Virex, lifting red dust into the air like ghosts of the past. Long ago, this planet had life, cities, and even music, but now it was silent. Except for the soft footsteps of a human named Darren Holt. Darren wasn't a hero. He wasn't a soldier. He was just a scavenger, moving from one dead world to another, looking for scrap to sell. His ship was old, his food supplies low, and his hope even lower. But he had heard a rumor, a story whispered in the darkest corners of the trade market. They said something ancient slept under the ruins of Virex, something powerful. Darren didn't believe in magic or myths. But credits were credits. If there was something rare hidden here, he would find it. He climbed over broken stones, stepping into the remains of a palace buried in sand. Tall pillars had fallen sideways, cracked with age. Strange alien symbols were carved into the walls, their meanings lost to time. In the center of the room, something caught his eye. A sword. It was stuck in a block of black stone, half covered in dust. The blade was old, rusted, and glowing faintly. Darren walked closer, blinking in confusion. Who would leave a sword like this here? It looked like junk, but something about it pulled him in. He touched the hilt. It was warm. He looked around. No one. He gripped the handle tighter. And with one strong pull, the sword came free. For a second, nothing happened. Then the ground trembled. The palace shook as if something beneath it had just awakened. Old lights flickered on the walls. A low hum filled the air. Darren stepped back, alarmed. What the hell? On the far wall, a panel slid open. A hidden camera turned toward him. In some distant place, a machine blinked awake. Thousands of kilometers away on a forgotten moon, an ancient AI inside a control room lit up for the first time in centuries. A robotic voice whispered in an old language, "The Emperor has returned." Darren had no idea that he had just become the most wanted man in the galaxy. Back inside the ruins, the sword pulsed softly in his hand. A symbol on the blade glowed, a crest shaped like a rising sun. Darren stared at it, unsure. Must be some old tech, he muttered, slipping it into a cloth wrap and tying it to his back. Could be worth something. He turned to leave, but the floor cracked under his boots. He jumped back just in time to avoid falling into a deep pit. Looking down, he saw mechanical limbs moving slowly, old machines waking from deep sleep. Time to go, he said, running out of the ruins. He reached his small ship hidden behind a sand dune. The ship was called the Grit, small, ugly, and barely flying, but it was his home. As he climbed aboard, the ship's warning system beeped. Unidentified signal detected. Origin, high orbit. Darren's eyes narrowed. Who's up there? The ship's screen flashed. A transmission came through, full of static. Then a robotic voice spoke. Attention all hunters. A Class 1 priority has been activated. The Blade of the Sovereign has been claimed. Reward, 3 million credits. Target, human male. Location, planet Virex. Darren's blood ran cold. What the hell is the Blade of the Sovereign? He whispered. He barely had time to think. The radar lit up. 3 ships were heading toward his position. Pirates, scavengers, maybe worse. He jumped into the pilot seat and slammed his hand on the launch button. The ship roared to life, engines shaking with effort. Sand flew everywhere as the Grit lifted off the ground. Inside the cockpit, Darren stared at the sword beside him. He didn't know what it was, or why everyone suddenly wanted him dead, but one thing was clear. He had picked up the wrong thing at the wrong place, and now the galaxy thought he was someone he wasn't, or maybe someone he was always meant to be. The stars looked calm from the cockpit window, but inside Darren Holt's chest, his heart was pounding. His hands gripped the controls of the Grit as it zipped through cold space, leaving planet Virex behind. The sword, still wrapped in cloth, lay beside him. It hadn't made a sound, but Darren could feel something strange, like heat pulsing under the fabric. He didn't know what it was. Only that since he pulled that rusty blade from the stone, everything had changed. First the signal, then the bounty. Now pirates were chasing him across systems. 3 million credits. Darren whispered, "That's enough to make half the galaxy." "Come hunting." The ship's AI beeped. "Warning. Engine core is overheating. Immediate landing required." Darren cursed. The Grit had taken too much damage escaping Varex. He was running out of time and luck. He scanned for a place to land. Only one option showed up. Station K7, an abandoned mining station orbiting the ice moon Veltra. It had no life readings, no traffic, no lights. Just a ghost drifting in space. Better than dying mid-flight, he muttered. The Grit landed hard on the outer platform of Station K7. Sparks flew from its damaged wing. Steam hissed from the cracks in its body. Darren grabbed the sword and stepped out. The station was quiet too. Quiet. Rust covered the walls. Broken panels dangled like loose teeth. Snow and ice had crept in through cracked airlocks. It smelled like metal and old death. Darren moved slowly through the dark hallways. Flashlight in one hand, sword tied across his back. He found what looked like a control room. Monitors were dead, but one large metal door on the side was sealed. Shut. Just beside it, a console blinked. Softly, once, he touched the console. It hissed. The door opened. Inside stood a massive robot, over 10 feet tall, made of black and gold alloy, dusted in frost. Its arms were thick like tree trunks, and its eyes were 2 glowing blue rings. It didn't move. Darren stepped back, pulling out his blaster just in case. But then, the robot moved. Its eyes blinked, and its head turned toward him. Its joints creaked like mountains shifting. Darren raised his blaster, heart racing, but the machine didn't attack. It knelt. Right there on the cold steel floor. It lowered its head and knelt before him. Darren blinked. "What are you doing?" The robot spoke, its voice deep and ancient. "Sovereign. Detected. Identity match confirmed. I serve the heir of the flame." "What?" Darren lowered his weapon. "You've got the wrong guy. I'm no emperor." The robot remained kneeling. "The blade of the sovereign has awakened. You hold it. You carry the flame. Therefore, you are the rightful heir." Darren slowly pulled out the wrapped sword. The second it touched open air, the robot's head bowed lower. "By the old code," the robot said, "I am yours to command." Darren was speechless. Just a day ago, he was digging through trash piles for scrap. Now a giant war machine was calling him sovereign. "This has to be some kind of programming error," he muttered. "No error," the robot said. "You have reactivated the beacon. All across the fallen empire, old guardians are waking." "What empire?" The robot looked up. "The Flameburn Empire. Dead for 2,000 years. You carry its last symbol of power. You have called the sleeping back to life." Darren backed away. "I didn't ask for this. I just picked up a sword." "The sword picked you," the machine said. Outside, the station's sensors pinged. A ship had entered the system, small, fast, and armed, a bounty hunter. Inside the station, the robot's head turned toward the window. "Hostile ship detected. Weapons hot." Darren rushed to the console. "Can we stop it?" The robot rose to its full height. "You need only command." Darren stared at him. He had never led anything in his life, but the hunter was coming. There was no time to hesitate. "Defend the station," he said quietly. The robot's chest lit with orange energy. "As you command, Sovereign." A low hum filled the frozen corridors of Station K7, echoing between the walls like a warning. Outside, the robot guardian, now awakened, fought off the incoming bounty hunter ship, sending blasts of orange light into the dark. But inside, something older had entered. Something silent. Darren Holt moved quickly. gripping the rusty sword in one hand and a blinking datapad in the other. The station's power core was dying, but the robot had given him access to a secret chamber, a hidden control room deep below the surface. He was looking for answers everywhere he went. Things kept calling him Emperor, Sovereign. Machines bowed to him. Ships refused to fire. Pirates backed off when they saw the blade. And now, this station had opened a door that hadn't moved in centuries. Was it really just the sword? Or was it him? He reached the sealed door. A strange crest, 3 rising stars, was engraved on it. He raised the sword toward it. The metal hissed, then unlocked with a heavy clang. Inside, a cold blue light filled the chamber. Holograms flickered to life maps, wars, and faces long dead. And in the center of the room, a figure stood, glowing and ghostly. She was tall, with silver hair and sharp eyes. Not human, something close, but not quite. Her armor was ancient and regal. She looked at Darren and spoke in a voice full of sorrow and strength. "If you're seeing this, then the flame has returned." Darren froze. "Who are you?" "I am Siren Valen, Royal Guardian of the Flameburn Empire. This is a memory recording, set to activate only if the sword of the Sovereign is touched by its true heir." "I'm not," he started to argue. But the hologram continued. "The Flameburn Empire ruled this part of the galaxy for nearly 1,000 years. It was built on peace, strength, and unity. Our emperor was human like you, the first and only of his kind to rise among us. His leadership ended wars. His vision built bridges between species. He was the symbol of balance." Darren stepped closer, heart racing. What happened to him? Siren's face darkened. He was betrayed. She raised her hand. The image changed. Now it showed a tall alien general, his face sharp, his uniform glowing with metals. Behind him, fires raged. This was General Kairos, a trusted commander. He wanted power, not peace. He led a rebellion. The Emperor died on the steps of the Crystal Tower. But before he fell, he passed his blade into the heart of the planet, and he whispered a message. The hologram zoomed in on the Emperor's final moments. He was young, pale, bleeding, but his voice was clear. "When the galaxy loses its light, the flame shall return through blood, not born of this world." The sword vanished with him. So did hope. Darren looked down at the blade in his hand. This can't be," he said, shaking his head. Siren's eyes locked onto his. "Your DNA matches the last living signature of the Sovereign line. You are his blood through time, through fate, or something greater. The Empire is gone, but the galaxy still remembers. And the sword knows who you are." Darren was silent. He wasn't a leader. He barely had fuel to escape a bounty hunter, but everything around him kept proving he wasn't just some scavenger. Any more than the hologram flickered. "Warning," Siren said, her voice shifting. "Tracking signal detected. Shadow fleet approaching. You must leave immediately." "What's the Shadow fleet?" "Kairos' descendants. They destroyed the Empire's final worlds. They hunt the flame. If they find you, they'll erase you before the prophecy completes." Suddenly, the control room lights dimmed. From the hallway came a loud metallic hiss. Something had entered the station. Darren ran for the exit. He passed the old hallways again, but this time, screens turned on as he moved past. They showed images of the Emperor standing on starships, shaking hands with alien leaders leading armies, smiling at children. And Darren realized the face wasn't exactly like his, but close enough. The resemblance was undeniable. He wasn't just holding the sword of a legend. He was connected to that legend. Somehow he reached the docking bay. The Guardian robot stood there, arm melted from battle, but still alive. "Enemy drone breached the station," it reported. "Evacuation is advised." Darren climbed into the grit. The robot opened its chest and placed a glowing orb inside the ship's console. "What's this?" Partial memory core of the Empire, it said. You will need it. As the ship prepared to launch, a shadow moved inside the hangar, a figure cloaked in armor. With eyes like burning ash stepped forward and aimed a weapon at Darren's cockpit. Asterisk. The stars outside the cockpit shimmered as Darren Holt pushed the grid into hyperspace. His hands trembled. Not from fear, but from the weight of everything he'd learned. The sword on the co-pilot seat wasn't just old metal. It was a symbol, a key, a beacon. And now it had lit up the galaxy. He was no longer just a scavenger. He was the spark that could restart an empire. But he didn't ask for any of it. Behind him, the memory core of the old flame-burned empire blinked softly, downloaded into the ship's system. It pulsed with old knowledge, names, maps, star routes, technologies long thought lost. And a single message on repeat: unite them, or they will all die. The AI voice from the memory core broke the silence. Recommended route: the broken ring. Darren raised an eyebrow. What's that? A chain of forgotten colonies, once loyal to the sovereign, now scattered, abandoned, or enslaved. But their hearts still remember. He sighed. Let's see if they remember enough to help. The broken ring was not a place. It was a story. A loop of 7 planets once bound by flame and loyalty. Now, they were cut off from major trade, isolated, ruled by minor warlords or syndicates. Darren's ship approached the first, Velinar, a dry world covered in ash clouds and broken towers. He landed just outside the city ruins. The sky was blood red, and a heavy fog rolled across the ground like a living thing. Before Darren could even step out, 10 figures surrounded him, alien scavengers. Their armor was rusted. Their eyes burned with hunger. Drop your weapons, human, one of them growled. You've got something we want. Darren raised his hands. Look, I'm just passing through. Then the sword lit up. Not bright. Just a glow. Faint, but enough. The aliens froze. One of them, a female with purple scars down her cheek, stared at the blade. Her lips parted. That symbol. She stepped forward, eyes wide. My grandmother told stories of that blade, she whispered. Said it was the mark of the flame, that it would return one day, that it would lead us out of the dirt. Darren blinked. I think I'm supposed to help you. One of the others dropped his weapon slowly. We thought it was just a myth. It was, Darren said. Until now. Over the next few hours, Darren listened to their stories. Velinar had once been proud. A place of scholars and soldiers. But when the flame-burned empire fell, they were forgotten. The syndicates came, took the children, burned the libraries. Slavery replaced freedom. But these people, this small group of rebels, they remembered. They had been waiting for something. Someone. They didn't expect him to be human. They didn't care. When Darren showed them the sword and the emperor's memory core, they dropped to one knee, not from fear, but from hope. And for the first time, Darren didn't feel like an outsider. He felt like someone needed. He stayed the night in a half-destroyed bunker beneath the city. That's when she entered, the scarred woman. Her name was Nara. I fought the syndicate for 12 years, she said, sitting beside him. Lost my brother. Lost my voice once too. They cut my throat when I tried to speak truth. But you kept fighting? I waited for the sword. She looked at him. I didn't expect it to be held by someone like you. Darren chuckled. That makes 2 of us. She smiled, then grew serious. If you really are the sovereign reborn, then you can't stay small. You have to rise. We'll help you. But they'll come. They always do, he nodded. Let them come. By morning, he had new allies. Nara and 20 fighters joined. His crew, they didn't have ships. But they had knowledge routes to other planets in the Broken Ring. Places where rebellion still lived in whispers. As they prepped for launch, a warning came through the comms. Incoming ship. No ID. Fast. Approach. The old robot from Station K7, who had repaired itself, and joined. Darren's crew stepped forward. Hostile configuration. Shadow Fleet markings confirmed. Nara pulled her blaster. Looks like your past just found us. The ship wasn't large, but it was sleek, black, and full of weapons. The Shadow Fleet had found the flame. Darren stood at the ramp. He held the sword high, letting its glow show through the red fog dot. The enemy ship hovered, then fired. The stars shifted slowly as Darren Holt stood in the command chamber of the ancient, flame-burned cruiser that had just saved his life. It was called the Vigil's End, a ship older than most colonies, once commanded by generals loyal to the Emperor himself. Its crew was barely alive, just 30 souls, alien and human descendants of the old Empire, hiding in deep space for generations. And yet, when they saw Darren's sword, they fell to their knees. They didn't ask questions. They followed him. But not everyone was ready to call him sovereign. Not yet. The cruiser's commander, a silent warrior named Kyle Thorne, stepped forward. His face was pale, marked by age and battle scars. His armor bore the faded crest of the flame. You carry the sword, Kyle said, but any scavenger can hold a relic. To lead the flame burn, you must pass the trial. Darren narrowed his eyes. What kind of trial? Kyle didn't smile. The trial of blood and memory. The same test the original Emperor faced. It will show us the truth, whether you are a chosen heir or a dangerous mistake. The Vigil's End changed course. Destination, Echo Core, a derelict station orbiting a dark, dying star. Once the heart of the Empire's leadership council, it now floated silent in space, its engines cold and lights dim. Darren looked at the cracked hull of the station as they approached. Looks friendly. Kyle didn't laugh. Echo Core doesn't kill with guns, it kills with ghosts. The station's gravity was weak. Inside, everything felt slow, heavy with memory. Darren stepped into the central chamber alone. Behind him, a great stone door slammed shut. In the middle of the room, a golden pedestal waited. Darren placed the sword on it. The lights dimmed. Then the floor fell away. Darren wasn't falling into space. He was falling into memory. He opened his eyes in another body. He was standing on marble steps. Around him, thousands of voices screamed. He looked down. Blood. There was blood on his hands. Alien. Bodies dead or dying surrounded him, and ahead of him, at the top of the stairs, was General Kairos, the traitor. You were warned, Kairos shouted in the old tongue. Peace made us weak. I gave them unity, Darren heard his own voice reply, though it wasn't his mouth moving. You gave them fear. Kairos raised his blade. Then die with your ideals. The battle began, but Darren didn't just see it. He felt it, each strike, each fall, the weight of decisions made centuries ago. He watched the Emperor die. Not in defeat, but in sacrifice, activating the sword's final lock, burying it deep beneath Virex, and sealing the Empire's last hope. Then another memory. Darren stood in a small chamber, looking into the eyes of a woman, Siren Valen, Royal Guardian. She touched his face. We failed you, she whispered. But the sword will wait. One day, you will return. Her face faded. Her words echoed, and Darren screamed. He collapsed back into the trial chamber. The sword pulsed beside him. Kyl Thorne entered slowly, his eyes wide. You survived. Varun looked up, shaking. I saw everything. I was him. Kyle knelt. Then it's true. You are not just a scavenger. You carry his will, his pain, his flame. Darren stood, not like before. This time his back was straight. His eyes were calm. His voice steady. I'm not the same man, he said quietly. But I remember him now. And I won't let it happen again. That night, the ship's council gathered in the command deck. Nara stood to his right, Kyle to his left. Before them, Darren spoke his first words as sovereign. I don't want to be worshipped. I'm not your savior. But if we let them, the shadow fleet will burn what's left of this galaxy. If we wait, others will die. I've seen it before. I lived it." He lifted the sword. "I say no more waiting." All eyes locked on him. Kyel stepped forward, drawing a blade and kneeling. "Then we follow." One by one, they all followed. In the darkness between stars, hidden satellites began to blink. Signals from Echo Core spread like wildfire. Ancient codes once thought lost. Flameburn allies across the galaxy received them. Some wept, some armed themselves, some simply whispered, "He has returned." Asterisk. The galaxy was waking up. From dust-covered temples to underground bunkers, from drifting colony wrecks to silent fleets, long-thought abandoned old allies were rising. The Flameburn signal had been sent, and its meaning was clear. The Sovereign had returned. But with every light that rose, a shadow followed. In the cursed halls of Rune, Lord Varn, the last heir of General Kairos, prepared his armies. "They will follow him because of memory," Varn said, voice like burning stone. "But memory burns, and flame can be drowned." Behind him, a massive map lit up. Hundreds of red dots moved. Ships, drones, assassins. He was sending the Silence Fleet, not to conquer. To erase. On the cruiser Vigil's end, Darren Holt stood in the center of the strategy chamber. Around him, Nara, Kyle, and the ship's AI projected holograms of nearby systems. Refugee fleets were contacting them. Rebel groups were asking for leadership. Merchant clans were offering ships, fuel, food. The Empire wasn't rebuilt yet, but it had begun. Still, something was wrong. "The signals from Sector 12 just went dark," Nara said. "All of them, at once." Kiel's eyes narrowed. "That's not a power failure." "That's a warning," Darren nodded. "It's Varn." The name made the room fall silent. Lord Varn, the Butcher of the Northern Ring, the man who wore Kairos' symbol, the man who had trained his whole life to destroy the flame, not rule it. "He'll come straight for the beacon worlds," Kyle said. "If he takes them, it ends before it starts." "We can't match his numbers," Nara added. "We barely have enough ships to protect our own." Darren stood quietly, then turned to the map. "We don't need to match him," he said. "We outthink him." Darren's plan was simple but risky. Instead of defending the beacon worlds head-on, they would bait Varn's fleet with a fake message, an old Flameburn distress signal, and draw his forces into the grave stars, a dead zone filled with unstable energy clouds, wrecked ships, and drifting mines left over from ancient wars. If it worked, Varn's fleet would be blind, cut off, and scattered. If it failed, they'd all be vaporized. Kyle frowned. "You're asking ships to follow you into a graveyard." "I'm not asking," Darren said. "I'm going in first." The Grit led the way. It wasn't the strongest ship, not the fastest. But it had Darren, the sword, and the Sovereigns. Signal. From across the galaxy, rebel ships followed. Patched cruisers, stolen fighters, converted freighters, all lit with the crest of the flame. At the edge of the grave stars, they waited. And then Varn arrived. His fleet was like a wall of blades, sharp, dark, merciless. Thousands of ships, drones, AI weapons. And at the center, the Eclipse, his flagship, black as night and shaped like a burning crown. Varn didn't speak. He simply launched. The war had begun. Darren gave the order. Now. The Flameburn fleet scattered, each ship diving into the storm of the grave stars. Lighting cracked between clouds of dead plasma. Old mines drifted lazily. Radar was useless. No one had the advantage. Except Darren. He had the sword, and in the middle of chaos, it began to glow. Bright, blinding, a beacon of order in the storm. The Flameburn rallied around it, using the light to stay coordinated. Like ancient instinct, the old formations came back. Kyle led the front line. Nara and the rebels attacked from the side. Darren stayed in the center, sword pulsing. guiding them like the heart of a living fleet. One by one, Varn's ships began to fall, but so did theirs. The storm was unforgiving. Every decision cost lives. Then, the eclipse entered the storm. It tore through wreckage like a black arrow, straight toward Darren. On the screen, a new transmission began. It wasn't video. Just a voice deep and calm. You were his shadow, human. But you are flesh. I am legacy. You are fire. I am cold. Darren replied, eyes hard. You're just another man chasing the ghost of a tyrant. No, Varn said. I am the silence that comes after kings fall. And he fired. The blast from the eclipse was enormous, a concentrated solar beam that vaporized two ships beside Darren. His shields cracked. Warning screamed. The grit was burning. He didn't run. He pushed forward toward the eclipse. Kyle screamed into Comes. You're not a soldier, Sovereign. You'll die out there. Darren gripped the sword, placed it into the ship's core, just like the AI taught him, and the ship changed. The cockpit lit with orange lines. The engines roared louder than ever before. The ship's AI spoke in a voice Darren had never heard. Sovereign interface accepted. Unleashing hidden flame protocol. The grit became something else. It shot forward, through fire, through chaos, through centuries of fear, and slammed into the eclipse's front shield. Darren ejected moments before impact. Ending twist. Floating in space. Fire around him. Darren watched as the grit exploded, taking out the eclipse's main cannon. But as he drifted, his suit cracked. Oxygen leaked. And from the eclipse, Varn emerged in a personal assault pod, blade drawn, eyes burning. No more ships. No more fleet stock, just two bloodlines. One final time, Varn pointed at him. Come, heir of ash, let's see if you bleed like your ancestor did. The stars were silent. No ships moved. No lasers fired. The war paused. Two men floated in open space, surrounded by wreckage and drifting fire. The debris of empires, the bones of fleets, spun around them like dying memories. Darren Holt hovered in a cracked spacesuit, blood floating near his cheek, the oxygen meter blinking red. Across from him, Lord Varn stood tall inside a sleek assault pod, wrapped in dark armor powered by ancient Kairos technology. No more speeches. No more lies. Only the sword mattered now, and Darren still had it. Though burned and half frozen, the ancient blade glowed faintly in his hand, as if it could feel what was coming. Varn's voice cut through the void, transmitted directly into Darren's suit. I watched your ship die. I expected more from the so-called sovereign, Darren coughed. Funny, I expected more from the great-grandson of a traitor. Varn's eyes narrowed. You carry old myths like they're truth. But this galaxy doesn't need flames. It needs order. He launched. The pod surged toward Darren like a missile. But Darren was already moving barely. He used his last thruster burst to drift into the wreckage of a broken warship. Varn followed, leaping from his pod, landing inside the hull. His armor clanked against steel. Inside the dead ship, there was gravity. Just enough for a final battle. They faced each other in a ruined hallway, sparks falling like snow. Varn unsheathed his blade. It was long, cold, forged from dark metal. No glow, no light. Only death. Darren raised the ancient sword. Fire met shadow. The clash was fast, brutal. Varn struck like a machine, precise, merciless. Every hit pushed Darren back. But his sword guided his arm like it remembered how to fight. Again and again, their blades met, sending shockwaves through the corridor. You're no warrior, Varn growled, pressing Darren to the wall. I don't need to be, Darren said through clenched teeth. I just have to end you. He ducked, rolled, and slashed, cutting across Varn's armor. Sparks flew. Varn roared and shoved him across the room. Darren hit the floor hard. Bones screaming, the sword lay beside him. Varn raised his blade. It's over, he said. Darren looked up, blood in his mouth. No, it's beginning. He reached for the sword. It burst with flame, not fire but light, blazing gold. It wrapped around his body, lifted him to his feet. Symbols ran down his arms. His eyes burned like twin suns. He wasn't alone. He was the Flameborn. Not just a scavenger. Not just a name, a living legacy. Varn hesitated. Just for a second. It was enough. Darren swung. The sword tore through Varn's weapon like paper, then through his chestplate. Then silence. Varn dropped to his knees. I was supposed to end the line. Darren looked down at him. You just helped me start it again. Varn collapsed. Dust in the dark. Outside, the Flameburn fleet received the final signal. The Sovereign stands. The silence is broken. Across the galaxy, uprisings began. Syndicates fell. Shadow fleets went dark. Beacons reignited. Old allies returned. The Empire wasn't rebuilt in a day, but it had a leader again. Weeks later, Darren stood aboard the new flagship, the Ember Crown, overlooking a restored world in the Broken Ring. Nara watched the sun rise over towers once destroyed. You've changed, she said. Everything has, Darren replied. Kyel approached, nodding. The Council waits. They want to hear your decision. What decision? Rebuild the Flameburn Empire, or start something new? Darren looked out at the stars. He wasn't the Emperor from the past. He was human, flawed, reluctant, but alive. And willing. He smiled. We don't need empires. We need unity. We need light. He held up the sword one last time, not as a weapon, but as a promise. Far beyond the known sectors, in a hidden system untouched by flame or silence, an old machine blinked awake. Its language was ancient. Its power immense. It whispered, the flame has returned. Initiate protocol, origin. And somewhere deeper in the void, something answered.